It's Wednesday, January the 6th, and this is the heart of the matter. An old story is told about some pranksters who broke into a department store one night. But instead of stealing merchandise, they switched the price tags. They put the lowest price tags on the most expensive items and the highest price tags on the cheapest items. You can imagine the chaos that ensued the next morning when the store opened. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus caused some chaos in a way by doing the same thing. He switched the price tags. What I mean is, Jesus put a high value on some things that we normally try to avoid. And Jesus commended those attitudes and actions to us in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus said the key to finding happiness and contentment in life is to cultivate the kinds of attitudes that most of the world doesn't value at all. Such is the case with what he said in Matthew 5, verse 4. He said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Jesus said that it is a good thing for us to mourn. How can that be? That doesn't make any sense to us at all. In our view, mourning can only be seen as a negative, something we try to avoid. It's something we associate with death or great loss. And yet Jesus switched the price tags on us. He puts value on mourning. How can that be? What did he mean by that? Well, this verse connects to verse 3 that talked about the value of being spiritually bankrupt and how we have nothing good to commend us to God. Well, verse 4 continues that theme. And so the person who realizes their spiritual bankruptcy before God, who truly sees their sinful heart for what it is, that person will mourn over their sin, just like Jesus says here. And the word Jesus uses for mourn is the strongest word for mourn in the Bible. It speaks of the deep grief we feel when we lose a loved one to death. We are all too familiar with that kind of mourning and grieving, aren't we? We've all felt that deep pain of loss and sorrow. But I wonder how many of us really mourn over our sin in the same way. How many of us feel that same sense of pain and grief and sorrow when we sin against God? We might feel a little regret or guilt when we choose to sin, but do we really mourn? Jesus said that mourning over our sin is one of the keys to a blessed life, a happy life. How can that be? Well, because it's not the mourning that makes us happy. It is the comfort that comes from God when we mourn over our sin. You have to take the whole verse. He said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." So as we mourn, God comforts. God ministers to our broken hearts. God heals us as we hurt over our sin. Our sin is great, our mourning is great, but God's comfort is greater. And that's the heart of the matter.